talked about this very unique phenomenon in the market, which is the ultra luxury market is now there is this weird segmentation happening at the very top, which is you're not really competing with Manhattan anymore. You're competing with Dubai. You're competing with Aspen. You're competing with Palm Beach. There is this, at the very, very top of the market, there is this segment of homes that are being bought by the same crowd. So as a New York City-based broker, how do you handle that? How do you prepare for that? And how do you sell that? John, let's start with you.
Thank you, Hiten. And by the way, thank you for having me here. How I handle that, I think that it's a great opportunity, actually, that this trend is happening within the luxury market. And it's part of the reason why ultimately at Elliman Gomes we chose to go national and really in many ways international with our business. And what we found is that this is not a very new trend. It's a trend that has actually been developing over a longer period of time. However, it's picking up a lot of momentum. And we're finding that our clients are collecting homes like they collect art on their walls. And we have all sorts of developers that we represent in different states, and we have clients that are preferred clients of ours that are investing in real estate. And we found that we were referring people from New York to agents at Douglas Elliman in California. And we were doing the same in Texas, and we were doing the same in Miami. However, as we expanded the team nationally, we had our own boots on the ground, and we created this very personal service and a direct personal connection, because you're not only going from one Douglas Elliman agent to another, you're going from one Elliman Gomes agent at Douglas Elliman to another. And these are high profile. Look, in the past couple of years, a tremendous amount of wealth has been created, as we all know, after the pandemic. And these people are not going to sit on cash. Right. There's a lot of volatility within the markets, stock markets, et cetera. And people are smart enough to invest in real hard assets like real estate. There's no better way to do that, I think, than to do it at the top of the luxury market.
And when you talk about it as an art collection, is there a lot of mix and matching happening then? Like, oh, I've got a penthouse in Central Park. I may be looking for a townhouse somewhere else. Is there a kind of the way you approach art is you stitch together a portfolio, right? You think about it quite mindfully about the kind of pieces you have and how they complement each other. Is there any element of that, Nikki, in what you're seeing?
Is this working?
It is.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Hiten, for having me here. Thank you to The Real Deal, who yet again has got all of us who are really interested in real estate together in the same room. So we appreciate everything you've done for our industry, how you've kept it on the front burner. Real estate porn is the most read news, I'm sure, in all of Manhattan and most luxury markets. So I'm a Real Deal addict.
Thank you. And your commission check is waiting for you outside.
I was expecting that. I'll be back again next year. So luxury is king in this market, in any other market you know too. Luxury is the driving force for all markets. When luxury sales stops, generally that market slows down and starts to hemorrhage. Right now, the luxury market is in fact on all four jets in Manhattan. I was really excited for these stats to share with you if you haven't heard about them already. This Monday, it was noted that last week's contracts in the luxury level, which is over $10 million in sales, hit the highest record since January of 2021. We're selling luxury again, and luxury is going to continue to be the gas and the momentum that's going on. Here's what we know about the rich folks. They love a lot of luxury. They don't just stop with one. They don't just stop buying the plane or the yacht or a home or the great art. They follow their friends. Getting a little feedback. They follow their friends. They follow their clients. They follow the people that they want to be friends with, and they buy luxury. They've been buying fast and furiously during COVID, and definitely second quarter and third quarter of 2022. It was a massive, massive opportunity. And again, I'm talking general, not just New York. Our luxury portfolio collectors buy all over the world. This is a tip that I give a lot of agents, and certainly most of you out here already know this. But if you have a luxury client, don't stop with your local market. You need to know where they own, where they'd like to own, and where they should own. And then you put your ear to the ground, you establish those relationships, and you're their advisor. You become what we call, on my team, a global portfolio advisor.
And I noticed some of that. I remember Daniel from Shanghai was here, and I've seen that happen. But let's take that.
Daniel is responsible for building up our
Right.
luxury portfolio.
Let's take that a little further. When you go into a new market, John, right? Are you thinking about how do you kind of break in with a splash? Because you've already put in the work. You've already had the grind and the hustle to get to where you guys are. You don't want to start from scratch in a new market. You want to announce yourself maybe in an elaborate, flashy way. So how do you do that? Do you partner with a veteran agent on the ground? Or do you kind of insert the Gomes brand and all the visibility that comes in? How do you sort of make a splash in a new market?
Yeah, absolutely. As we began to expand and go into the new markets, we always identified that one person who would be the person that would sort of be the boots on the ground, that is the local face that people know, that has got all of the experience. And at the same time, that person has to have the beliefs and the values that we have created many years ago at Gomes. So yes, absolutely. You go to, the first step is the veteran, of course. Once you get to the veteran, you can then begin to grow from there.
But what's the pitch to them? They're doing great business. They have the reputation. Why do they need a field team, an Gomes team? What's the pitch?
I'll give you an example. At Gomes, we have a new agent that started, I think, maybe a month and a half ago. He was a broker. He's working in New York. He's very well established. I've done many deals with him over the years. And he owns his own firm, and he was doing good enough. He was, putting food on the table and taking care of his family. However,
Putting food on the table, he's selling 100 million a year.
The truth is, he came to us, and I actually proposed to him, and he came to us, and it was an opportunity for him to ultimately co-brand with us. And it's what I say to agents all the time. We are a part of the team. I'm constantly trying to remind people that this is the Gomes team. Yes, John Gomes and Frederick Eklund started this team many years back. However, we could never do what we do without that last part in our name, which is ultimately the team.
And so then you figure out the commission splits, or is it sort of standardized for each new partner in a market? How does that work?
Yeah, so we have a standard contract. We learned that the hard way, to be honest with you. We learned a lot of things the hard way, to be honest with you. But what we have now is a standard contract so that everybody comes in, everyone has the same contract, everybody has the same terms, everyone knows this is. Not everyone is paid the same because you're paid on a scale, not differently than how you would be with your firm. But everyone's on a scale, so everyone's incentivized to actually make more.
And Nikki,
Oh, we don't do it that way.
Okay, let's hear it.
I believe in partnerships, and that's how all of us should be thinking. That other asset out there that has access to a client, a customer, or a property is your partner. You can't get it done without them. You may have the engine, you may have the reputation, you may have the ability, but when you bring on someone to help you bring a deal to the end, they are your partner. 50%, whether it's referral or just an introduction. And people hesitated that at the beginning. 50%, I worked on this for 6 months. I had this huge marketing budget. I've spent my time and blood, and I'm going to give away 50%. No, you're not giving away anything because it would have been zero without that partner. So the reason we have very, very strong relationships around the world, and the reason we have these international desks is every single one of our partners gets 50% of whatever we've earned.
Now I realize, I'm sorry, I have to say, now I realize, and if there are any Gomes agents out there, now I realize that we're overpaying you guys. If I could get away with 50-50, I'd be given 50-50 all day long, Nikki Field. Good for you. High five on that. Come on. All right.
I told you, I promised you a little bit of spice. But it's it's interesting, right? You're about a 90 person odd team, or have you got into the triple figures?
We have 100 people strong, and that includes our staff and our agents across 5 states and 13 offices.
Right. I want to get a show of hands here. How many brokers roughly in the audience? Don't be shy. Okay. Developers, wannabe developers, same category. Thank you. Architects, design and residential adjacent services. Okay, thanks so much. The reason is I want to get into the buyer pool a little bit. And understanding the buyer pool in New York is crucial. We saw this exodus to South Florida for a little while. Based on the stats you just quoted and some other stats that I've seen, there seems to be a little bit more excitement back in the market at the very high end. International buyers seem to be coming back a little bit. Any thoughts on that? When we last were on stage in 2017, international buyers.
The last time I got an invitation from you was 2017.
We have to spread you out, otherwise, I don't know, be a commodity, right? We have to make sure we have a little time. But there was $150 billion worth of transactions in New York in 2017 from international buyers. After that, Chinese capital controls, COVID, a very strong dollar, all those factors contributed to bring that down very, very significantly. And as a result, certain product types definitely suffered. What are you guys seeing now in terms of international buyers?
Hey, still follow the money. That's what makes a successful person in this industry. Figure out where the money's coming from and where it's going to. And that pivots almost daily. There are and have been huge tides of identified profiles, such as our wonderful Asian run, which began in 2008. We all ran that very well. Soon after, we saw the Middle East group coming in. Right after that, God loved the Russians. They were deep, they were hard, they were big, and they had the best budgets of all. They're gone now. We all know that. They'll be back.
They're all in Dubai, I told you.
Well, we're going to spend some more time over there for sure. Right now, the 1 and 2 profiles that we're seeing in Manhattan residential real estate are Indians. We opened up our India desk in 2016. It was a slow run, and it was generally at the bottom of the market they were entering. But since COVID, they've been able to get their funds out. They love all things American. London is oversold, so they've come to us for opportunity, which we still have a lot of. And next to Indians, on our team, we're seeing Canadians. We love our northern brothers and sisters. We know so many of them go south. But on the way, they're often stopping in New York, or we identify them in Canada through their wealth advisors, and we make certain that we make the introductions for them in southern Florida. I see and certainly feel that the Chinese community has not been silent. They're just under the radar, but they're there. I'm sure many of you in this room have done some major deals. I will announce that we have a Chinese buyer for a $150 million listing that we have. No one's ever heard of him. He's never bought anything else in New York. He didn't know where this property was, but he wanted the best. We're going to be seeing a lot more from our Asian cousins, and we welcome them.
John, I want to get your take on that as well. International buyers, who's making waves, who's disappeared, and who's under the radar?
Yeah, absolutely. So after COVID, when the market came back, it was all about the return of the domestic buyer, quite frankly, because the gates were not open for others to come in. That ran its course, as we know, and the market kind of went to sleep for a while. When the market came back, by the way, I must say, at a very inconvenient time, the last 2 weeks of December, I remember being in Brazil and getting a phone call from one of my agents who was working with a buyer who was international, and he was buying 4 apartments. And there I was with birds in the background negotiating this deal. That was the beginning for me of the return of the international buyer. Every week we have seen more international buyers. We have done more international deals. 5 minutes before I came on stage, I was sitting there approving a 5-city international tour for one of our projects that we're doing. So we go out all the time. We've been doing talks and having all sorts of, we have a partnership with Architectural Digest where we go internationally and we're meeting people and presenting our projects that our developers are paying for our hotel rooms and our flights because we're coming back with business. That's happening again. It's the first time in a long time.
May I say one last thing? All of us in this room are the most fortunate in our industry. The fact that we work in this city, in this industry. Regardless of all of the highs and lows, the flows, the historical data that we know, New York continues to thrive. Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Developer out there. The fact that you kept digging and building during COVID has given us all the ability to pay for our children's tuition. So let's hear it for the developers.
Hiten, I did want to add one point to that. I also think that, it's a fact. When international buyers come to town, they come with cash. And the domestic buyer is sort of facing these 6% interest rates in general. So they kind of move to the sidelines. And it's giving an opportunity as this door opens for international buyers to come in, and they have purchasing power because they have cash, and the price can be negotiated lower. The terms of the deal, the concessions, and so on and so forth are more favorable for them. So I also think that's part of why they're coming back.
The other thing at the very high end is their incentive to buy is sometimes not investment. Their incentive to buy is sometimes to get the money the fuck out of wherever they're coming from, right? And so that creates a lot of opportunity at the high end. We saw a unit at 220 Central Park South, which I believe Daniel Oak bought for $88 million. And that was a crazy price at the time. I think it was $9,000 a foot. A year later, or a year and a half later, he sold it for almost double. Right? And because the motivation for that buyer, the Chinese buyer who's the co-founder of Alibaba, was not about making a return. It was about something else. So very interesting things happening.
It was about status.
Yeah, also, right? And that is something, it moves the market in such a way. When Larry Ellison is collecting jewels all over the place, he's not really worried about overpaying or underpaying, right? He's just wants to collect. Back to your point about art. But I want to get into new product development. I think brokers often think about the selling phase, the marketing phase, and all of that. There's very little discussion, I think maybe to our detriment as well at The Real Deal, about pre-construction consulting. As a broker, you really need to get quite technical to really make an impact. So you have some of the best knowledge about what is selling. How early are you involved in projects? So site selection, architecture, all of that. How early do you get involved, and what's your advice to brokers about kind of finding an edge there?
New development king.
Okay, so now you're speaking my language. So on the new development side, by the way, I got into the business, I think it was about 18 years ago. I was at the 575 office at Douglas Elliman, which was in Midtown. I'm a downtown guy. I was selling, quite naturally, apartments and condominiums that were new developments downtown. I sold a couple of them in a building called the Onyx at 261 West 28th Street, where I met my now business partner for the past 18 years, Frederick Eklund. And it was in that project that I really got excited about new development. And it was Frederick Eklund's first project as well in new development. And we were in the energy that comes from the meetings that you're sitting there with architects and designers and people who are laying out floor plans. I sat there and I realized, wow, what an incredible opportunity we have as real estate brokers to reshape the skyline of New York City, to really redefine what it's like to live in an apartment. And I just thought that that was a powerful thing. I also found it very interesting.
But did you have a seat at the table? Did they take you seriously when you started weighing in?
Yes, I had a seat at the table next to Frederick, and I learned a lot from Frederick. And I remember my first few meetings in buildings that we were working on, I didn't really say much. I kind of took it all in. He did a lot of the talking, I did a lot of the learning, and then over a period of time that changed because I became as well versed in the vernacular and the discussions and the topics. And now the way that it works, Frederick is really scientific. His brain knows how to take an envelope and he knows what to create. He knows the best laid floor plans. He knows the ratio of 1 bedrooms to 2 bedrooms to 3 bedrooms. His brain is wired that way. Mine is not. What I'm very good at and what I love and what I'm truly passionate about are interiors. I've always loved design. A big part of the reason why I'm sitting here working in real estate is because I've always had an obsession with design.
We can see it.
Ah, well, thank you very much. But I'm obsessed with design. I think of myself as a trend forecaster, really, quite frankly, because we are working with these developers who rely on us to give them immediate feedback on what it is that people want, what they don't want. Because remember, we're involved from the very beginning of the process. As you mentioned, sometimes we bring the deal. I recently brought a garage to a developer because it was sitting empty, and it was in my neighborhood. And I proposed that to my developer. He then started to evaluate the opportunity. He then brought in a floor plan guy that I started working with, an architect, and so on and so forth. So we work from the very beginning until the end, because remember, we set up the sales team. So we're getting direct feedback from the sales team on a project that's in Chelsea. And in Greenwich Village, we're working on a new project that is at the very beginning of its phase. And so we take the information that we're learning. Does that person, now there's a trend where people are willing to have slightly smaller bedrooms because they want a larger primary bath, or they want less room in the bedrooms because they rather have more room in the common spaces of the home. That is constantly evolving. People used to live in closed-in kitchens, then they went to open kitchens. Now we're sort of in between. That's evolving on a regular basis. And remember, when we work with developers, we have to be forward-thinking, because in many cases, these buyers will not live in these apartments for maybe 3 or 5 years out into the future. So you have to remember, on day one, when you give them the keys, it's got to be relevant then.
And when do you get paid? Because let's say you do all this legwork and you consult on the design, etc., and you're replaced before the sales start happening. That's just a risk you take, I assume, right? You're not getting paid up front as a consultant or anything like that.
Look, we have protections within the contract. It's not so easy to let someone go. If there's non-performance, or if you do something wrong, yes, you can let a broker go. However, when you do let a broker go, there is a kill fee. You know, you've got to pay a negotiated amount to let that broker go. It generally does not happen to us, thankfully.
I'm going to get a little bit into... Go ahead.
We still have hope that we could be second. Could I take what John just... Don't we?
Heck, in this market, things are taking
Second wife
forever to
anytime.
sell that I'm the third wife sometimes.
I say this, I'm a bit of a broken record at this, but I've never met a top broker who doesn't have like a ridiculous sense of optimism, sort of an annoying sense of optimism. You kind of need that to make it work.
Could I take John's comments, because I see something happening ahead of us, okay? We all know, particularly those of us in New York, that we have lived off of new development. We pray at their altar. We truly do. It's taught us a lot about real estate. It's really upped our game. But I see in the future a build out on hotel branded residences. Hotel branded residences, in my opinion, are for the luxury buyer, is their Ozempic. Okay, it's their drug, right? And for you guys in the audience that don't know what Ozempic is, it's the diet drug, right? That so many women are taking right now. Why are hotel residences for luxury buyers Ozempic? Because it's a fast means to their goal without any hard work and without any pain, right? So buying a hotel residence right now for our portfolio builders is a slam dunk. I don't care how much experience you have. If you put in front of them a Ritz-Carlton, a Four Seasons, or, my God, an Amman, they will, without visiting it, without asking for research, without contemplating for very long, they'll grab it.
Yeah,
They're
this is the
collecting
thing, right?
these residences.
You're talking about those fluid buyers who might be based in New York but are buying somewhere else,
Yes.
and they don't have time to get acquainted with neighborhoods and stuff. They're picking brands now. But before I get too much into product, I think we need to address something that's happening in the brokerage business. So the brokerage business, for those of you who might not be familiar, is having a terrible time, right? I know you don't speak for Anywhere Real Estate. I know you don't speak for Douglas Elliman, but this is the context in which we're operating. Yesterday, Anywhere Real Estate, which is the parent company of Sotheby's, which is your firm, announced a $138 million loss in the quarter. This follows massive losses prior. Elliman's had losses as well. The Q1 stats aren't out, but I'm assuming they're not going to be pretty. How does turmoil at the brokerage level impact your business, if it does? Or how do you think about it when you're thinking about whether to stay with the company or move on? I think it's an important question. It's one of those that doesn't maybe feel as good, but it's important to address.
Keep your eyes on your market. Follow the money. And yes, these national companies are now having the ricochet effect of that massive sales period, pre and post COVID. It's settled down. We all know that mortgage rates have been the impetus for the slowdown. But if you keep your eye on the money, where is it coming from and where is it going? You'll make your own market. That's what we do. We are laser focused on where the money is now. And I think that in this market, and I'm sure everybody in this room agrees, we have far more opportunities than in Cincinnati, Ohio, or poor San Francisco right now. Most of our team knows this. A huge amount of our referrals are coming out of San Francisco. There's always an ebb and always a flow. The big picture is not one that I need to be concerned about.
Are you not
I'm
worried
concerned
about
the
losing
25
services? Are you not worried about Sothebys cutting off certain support services
Good
they
point.
provide?
Okay. If you are in a position where you're concerned about those services, just double down on what you're providing. Spend your own money. That's how the big players do it. They don't look for what the company is going to offer them. They have their own marketing budget. They have their own travel budget. They have their own clothing budget, like John does. But invest. Invest in you. Invest in your market. Invest the people that are working with you. And the macro picture will land where it lands. I am ever the optimist.
Yeah, look, it's sort of not fair to reference the past quarter without looking at maybe the past 8 quarters. And you have to understand, just like anything else, it's not only real estate that's affected by that, it's all industries. And sometimes one industry and not another, and then the next time it's that industry and not that one. It's hard, if you look back at the past, 2 years, brokerages are doing pretty well. There have been challenging times, and some, by the way,
I
have
think Elliman stock is down 50 or 60% over the last 2 years, so I don't know if that's true.
Okay, well, let's wrap 21 into that, right? So does that cover 21 and that recovery from COVID? And also what I see is I'm at Douglas Elliman, and the company has been around since 1911. The company is probably going to be around for a hell of a lot longer than I'm working in real estate. It has a very strong reputation. Yes, it is a challenging business. However, Gomes is sort of its own entity within Douglas Elliman. And quite frankly, I agree with what Nikki says. If you're losing services on that end, then put your own money in. I believe in myself and my team, and I'm not willing to spend the money. And by the way, we already spend the money. We don't rely on Douglas Elliman to provide us with everything that we need, because quite frankly, it's why we're doing our own thing. Because that model is different, and it's certainly different than what we want, we will always be at Douglas Elliman, and we appreciate being at that company. It makes us a hell of a lot stronger. However, we learned a long time ago that we didn't want to rely on doing our business the way that they run their business. We're different. We're unique. We're special. And we leaned into who we are, and we know what we're good at. We have our own national marketing director. We have our own graphic designers. We have our own branding. We have our own offices. We're not really...
And you have a lot of autonomy, or complete autonomy, about how you approach clients and all of that as well, right?
I'm sorry, what did you say?
You have complete autonomy about how you approach clients, how you represent yourselves.
We have complete autonomy with how we approach clients, but I want to say that that's something that we earned. It was not easy to get here. In many ways, I feel like Frederick and I have always been a hot potato. I felt like I've always been an outsider. I feel like I've always had to work really hard to prove myself. I feel like I've naturally done things differently. I recognize that that's a good thing. And both Frederick and I are similar in that regard. And we had to fight for what we want. Because Douglas Elliman, the truth is, they didn't want us to grow, because that was their model. For a long time, they had this model where they have 10 team members. And I understand why they do that, because they want to keep it fair and they want to have an equal, even playing field. However, at a certain point, we realized that wasn't going to work for us, because that wasn't where our model was going. So we had meetings with the executive team, and we talked about what we wanted to do. It took some time. However, I think we broke through, and personally, I think that we've created a new model in a mega team, which, quite frankly, I think is going to be the future of this business.
What's good for the crowd isn't necessarily the best thing for the very top, right? And I think that's the constant tension. They're thinking about it from a company level, you're thinking about it from your future and your team. So it's always going to be interesting. Have you seen any pressure on commissions? There are companies out there that there's one, top brokerage in the Hamptons that charges 1%. I don't know how they get away with that, but they charge 1%. Have you seen any pressure on commission structures at all?
I personally think we hear much more about the depressed commissions than we actually realize. Our mantra in our team, and everybody here knows it, it's 6%. If you can't afford us, you can use one of our competitors that knows what their value is. But we believe it's a fair brokerage fee for what we add to the package. Our commitment at a full brokerage fee is to surpass our clients' expectations, whether we're working for a buyer or a seller. We want to get them the best possible deal, probably one better than they had anticipated at the end of the day. And we've never taken 1 point off of 6%.
Never shaved off a commission on a deal.
No, I haven't. And someone near and dear to you knows that too. I don't know if he's still here, but we just can't. We know what we're worth, and we truly put the pedal down hard as long as we know that we have the commitment from our buyers and sellers to pay us a full, fair commission, which really helps with our referrals because people that are sending business to us know that we're getting the 6%. We will and often hear that our competitors will do less, not John. He's a full commission guy too. And quite honestly, sometimes our clients do try them because they think that 1.5% is going to make a difference to their bottom line. In more cases than not only doesn't, it's a detriment.
The problem is then it cheapens the brand in a way, right? And then that 5.5 becomes a 5.2, and then all hell breaks loose at some point, right?
How about that?
Yeah.
Remember what you're worth. Stay firm on what you're worth. It's a relatively modest amount for the time of money and the investment you make. And by the way, you can choose to work with whomever you want. That's the key in our business. I think if you're really good at what you're doing, make certain that you fully vet your buyer and your seller so you don't waste your time. And those commissions that you are getting are well warranted. I'm sure you agree.
Agree. The short answer to your question is absolutely yes. Is there a pressure on commissions? Absolutely. I think that's happening for a couple of reasons. One, you have this new trend where you have star brokers who are leaving their firms and they're creating their own firms. When they do that, there's a gap that they have, or a surplus that they have, if you look at it that way from their perspective, because they don't have to share that percentage with their firm. So they can afford to take a listing for less. Then there's people who are just desperate for business because they don't have any, and that is a reality. And by the way, there's a combination of the two. There's some people who started out on their own firms and they're desperate to get deals, so they're really trying to come down on the commission. I'm not really worried about it. I feel very confident in my ability and the ability of our team. I'm not afraid to walk away. I just say to people, we're among the best in the business. And if anything, I should charge a premium for that. So I'm not going to give you a discount for my business. And by the way, I'm willing to walk away. And I think it's a really bad idea if you choose someone who's going to take a lower commission, because they're probably going to get you a lower price too. So don't focus on the percentage, focus on the dollar that you're going to receive in profit at the end.
Have you ever walked away from a project because someone tried to lowball you on commissions?
There's a current project that I have just said no to because the broker, they wanted to give us below 2% commission.
Nice.
I said that's a no.
I'm going to tell you a story, and this is absolutely true. The developer came to me to bail him out. A failing project, one worth about $500 million. Many people know that my team took it over, but before we did, I said to him, you cannot afford us. We are resale brokers. We go out at full 6%. He knew that we could get the job done. He knew our track record and our resources, and this developer paid us for the entire $500 million. Mara Plum knows about it, a 6% commission. At the end of it, when we sold the $80 million penthouse, he actually said to us, do you think I should pay you more? That was a throwaway. He didn't pay us more, but he did offer that up.
I'm going to turn it over to the audience in a minute. I just have a couple more questions. I want a rapid fire sense of what you think is working right now in New York in new development. So one of the things is the Billionaires Row projects. There's no land left to build. You cannot build another 220 just because wherever you would build it is all spoken for, right? 220, 520, whatever. So what's the very next high-end type that's working? Is it townhomes? Is it penthouses somewhere else? Are you trying to ultra-luxurify an area of Manhattan that wasn't at that level? What's the next thing? And a quick answer, please.
Townhomes, I have not seen what's happening today in this market to townhomes in the almost 20 years that I've been in this business. It is outrageous. I cannot believe what people are paying for townhomes. I'm recommending to my buyers who are ultra wealthy people that you be cautious at this price, and particularly because they're buying these townhomes, these ultra wealthy, high net worth individuals, and they're gutting them. I mean, literally just gutting them. Homes that people could live in quite comfortably, but it just wasn't their taste level. So they're putting in many cases up to $2,000 a square foot in the build out. And by the way, they're paying over $3,000 a square foot. So we're talking about a minimum of $5,000 all in, and probably a little bit more, not including any of the soft costs. It's crazy, but there are no townhouses to be had. Trust me, I've got clients that are searching, and I'm calling everyone I know, asking them, do you have anything? I'm door knocking, because that's something I learned from our California market. Door knocking, trying to get people to sell.
Let's talk about what's not working.
Let's do it.
Cooperatives. We've all been there. Most of us cut our teeth on co-ops in Manhattan. It was less than 10 years ago, 84% of our market. That's what everyone wanted. They wanted to arrive in the club. The cooperative structure was one that New Yorkers embraced. Well, co-ops are a dying dinosaur right now. We all know that. That's where the opportunity plays are. If you want to get a great deal for yourself, if you want to get a great deal for your client, you're looking at co-ops, because that's where the pressure points are. Our condos are 70% of the market. I'll revert back to hotel branded residences, because that's going to be hot. Townhouses are 8% of the current market and growing. So if you're putting your money into townhouses, you're going to get your money out. If you're putting money into co-ops, stay there for a couple of generations. I can't tell you you're going to make anything.
I think the reason for that is that people want new, people want fresh, and that is something that you can find in a condominium, and I think that that's why new developments fare quite well. And, co-ops can be older and a bit more stuffy. I mean, sometimes you can have renovations, but even in some of the finest co-op buildings, it's like you walk into that lobby and it's like, whoa, you see the dust collecting, and it's like, when was the last renovation here? It's crazy.
And there's another trend that's interesting, and it's maybe pioneered by a buff, bald, successful guy. I'm not talking about John Gomes. I'm talking about someone else here. At 212 Fifth Avenue, you had an interesting case study with Jeff Bezos. Let's talk about that.
212 Fifth Avenue came online in 2014.
Nikki,
and wasn't moving that well. The developers there were pretty smart, and they were identifying, because it was a high price per square foot. What was it, Mara? 34. It averaged 3,600 a square foot at that time. So where were they going to get these buyers? We had introduced some there because empty nesters were still staying in the city. They were selling their 20-room apartments uptown and going downtown to where it was cool. They didn't realize that Nomad wasn't really that cool, but it felt close enough to being downtown. But it still wasn't resonating with a high-end luxury buyer. We had a really good experience. Jeff Bezos was coming into town at that time with all of Amazon, and Jeff loved our foosball in the penthouse. We were asking $100 million for it. Yeah, it was a ridiculous price, but it set the standard of the units below it. Jeff fell in love with the apartment almost as much as his two teenage children did, because they spent a lot of time there. So he walks into the kitchen with me and said, "What do I have to do to get this?" I told him. He said, "Okay, but I get the foosball table." Of course, he got the foosball table. So that was an $80 million buy, the penthouse on one more floor. In June of 2020, he calls and said, "I need more space." At that point, what did he have, Mara? He had 18,000 square feet already, right? And basically I said, "Jeff, you don't need any more space. I mean, it's just you, these visiting teenagers, and an attractive but skinny girlfriend." He didn't need a whole lot more space. He thought it was the right thing to do at the right time, at the right price point for Manhattan. That's a guy that stood by his commitment to the city.
I find that trend fascinating where you essentially stitch together a single family home within a new development. I'll take a couple questions from the audience, just 2 requests. 1 question only per person, and it has to be a question.
Brokerage
Hannah,
resi side.
where are you? This gentleman there in the red tie.
Right out to exactly.
I have Hannah Kramer here.
I was with Nathan yesterday. He said, "Yeah, I'm going to be speaking right before you." So.
Yeah, have you got a mic?
So
Here.
sorry, I need to go out for new questions.
Thank you so much. You guys, my name is Alexander Zakarin, the Seekers. You have decades of experience, especially combined. If it boils down to one thing that like skyrocketed your business, not a small thing, not a incremental growth, but something in your career that let you grow like super fast, what was this thing? Thank you.
So the question was, what was your sort of the moment that just rocketed your growth?
My breakout moment came in my second year of real estate. I would do anything and everything for anyone to work an open house or to do a showing so that I could hopefully meet a direct buyer. And one day I was at 54 Stone Street, which was like a big, 2,500 square foot apartment that needed to be gut renovated that was overpriced. And a gentleman, very unassuming man with a cap, walked in and started talking to me. That was definitely not what he was interested in. However, I probed and started a conversation. I learned that he really wanted something that was renovated and something that was new. I knew at the time that there was a building coming up in Battery Park City called the Visionaire, and I had met the sales director just a few days prior. So I said to this gentleman, this is not for sale yet. However, I think I can get you in there because I know the sales director. So I called the sales director, made the appointment. He was the first person to see it. There was a building model, and he became very focused on one unit at the top, which is the $6 million penthouse. He then, later in our conversation, said, God, wouldn't that be amazing to have like one apartment at the top to have the two? And I said, that would be a spectacular investment. And he looked at me and he said, oh, but they would never sell that to me. I said, let me handle it. I handled it. We did the deal, $12 million. It was a 4% commission. It was $500,000. It was my second year in the business, and that was my breakout moment. Yeah. By the way, I just want to add to that because it's a little bit funny, I think. It was also the day that I handed in my commission slip to my manager at Douglas Elliman and told him that I was leaving. And he then said to me, but I don't think you understand. And I said, what don't I understand? He said, you do understand that this building isn't going to close for a couple of years and that this commission of $500,000 is going to become $250,000 when you walk out the door. And I said, I don't think you understand how much I'm going to do in the next 2 years and how much more money I'm going to make than that $250,000 that I'm leaving on the table. The rest is history. By the way, that was Douglas Elliman that I left and Douglas Elliman that I came back to. So what goes around comes around.
I'll take one more question. There on the left, Hannah. Oh, it's Jackie. I think it's Jackie. Hey, Jackie.
Hi everyone. Nikki, I haven't seen you in a long time. So what the heck is going on in Midtown? I was late to today's session because I was doing a whole history of what's going on in Midtown. 230 days on the market, 300 days on the market. What is going on in the condo market in Midtown?
Yeah, to be honest with you, it's not really my market. I'm not spending that much time in Midtown.
You know this is for you. You know this is for you.
Thank you, Jackie. We have a Midtown specialist on my team, and it happens to be me. And I'm not doing very well in that segment, I assure you. All right, look, again, New York is rising. We always go back to the basics. Around the park, in Tribeca, Billionaires Row. Midtown is the very last to come back, and it is the lowest in price point. I was talking to somebody yesterday. We in this room, up until 2018, lived by the manner of sell fast, sell high, right? Get that product, get that customer, sell as high as possible, get out the door. 2019 started, things slowed down, and we've had to adjust, sell low and sell slow. We are still selling, but we are selling at lower price points, except in that Uber market, and we are selling much slower. The fact that there's so many of you here today is truly amazing, because we all know today to do any deal, and I'm sure even the very successful Jackie Tupetsky will agree, it takes 6 months with the buyer if you're really good at what you're doing. So it's a slow, slow climb. That's similar to Midtown. I believe in it. I live there. I'm going to live there for a long time because I'm never going to get the money out what I paid. But it's a good quality of life.
Nikki, John, don't you think they've been a great audience? Let's give them.
You guys have been great.
And thank you. Let's give our participants. Thank you so much.